Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and
I don't know, Joel Osteen, maybe? Because I was in church this weekend. So, hey, everybody, welcome in to Dig on America, this impromptu and possibly first of a few podcasts that I'm going to do while I have some time. The reason why I'm doing this right now is this new series I'm basically starting up, which is going to be called just lunch break with Dutch. So might have people on for this, might not. But just as you can imagine, I'm on my lunch break. So it's that time of day here. What, 11:45, 11:52 right now. So, but today I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about a couple of things. And Twitch says that we need to stream more in order to start being monetized there. So I'm going to start streaming more on Twitch in order to be monetized there. Being very honest about the intention here. So, but it's always good to get online and say hello. And if you want to interact with the show, by all means, you can just leave a comment on Twitch or on YouTube or on Facebook and get involved. So what I basically wanted to talk about today was the experience that I had over the weekend. I'll get to that in just 1 second, but what I want to just briefly touch on first, just a couple of real quick news items that you guys probably see in the news. Apparently, there is they're getting close to a stalemate in Russia. I was looking at a news article here. Let's see if I could pull up the right one. The NBC is basically reporting that they are approaching a stalemate with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that it looks like neither side is winning. So it kind of comes down to, like, what's Putin going to do at this particular point? Does he pull back? Does he continue to push on? And I think that there's some real fear here, because I don't think he's the type of guy who wants to admit that he lost, or that this was some sort of failed venture for him. So that is a bit troublesome, because if it does get to this point where it looks like neither side is going to be able to win, then you have to start to worry about what escalation of type of conflict is going to start to become engaged by Russia. And that, of course, there really isn't too much more they can do without the really, really bad shit. So hopefully that does not happen. But you kind of have to be realistic and at least keep your eyes on that stuff. Second, real quick news item is the confirmation this week of soon to be Supreme Court Justice. And I've been watching the prelude to confirmation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this confirmation process on Wednesday when we have Shahid Buttar on the show along with Big Haas and Mikey. But I just want to say one thing, and I just kind of want to say this and clear the air. And I've said this before, so some of you have probably heard me, that the right-wing narrative is that because Biden had said that he was going to select a black woman to be the first ever black woman on the United States Supreme Court, that therefore you had heard Ted Cruz say about a month and a half ago, that he was picking from like 6% of the nation. And what does that say about the other 96 or 94, 93%, whatever it was, 6 or 7% was the number that he used. And the idea is to get across that whoever the nominee might have been at the time, because there had not been a nominee when Cruz said that, that they wouldn't be qualified. It was sort of a slap in the face to the rest of the country. And the truth of the matter is that any African American woman who sits on a bench anywhere across the United States, or is an attorney or a doctor or a principal or a legislature or whatever the case may be, in about 99% of those instances, that person is going to be overqualified for the position that they hold. And the reason why that is true is because Black women have the most hurdles to overcome in order to get to a particular position within our society. And that means that Black women are, by their actual existence in those positions, are generally speaking overqualified. So the idea, I mean, can you imagine an underqualified African American judge? Can you even think about that? Does that even make any sense? That someone would be able to, that a Black woman specifically, or a Black man, or and this kind of goes for any minority, that could hold a position within government or a large company and be underqualified? I mean, yeah, they want to push that idea across with things like affirmative action, but that obviously we know that affirmative action has helped white women more than any other group. So the idea that uh, any Black woman who is in consideration for the Supreme Court would have that actually got nominated would have a resume that would be underqualified is silly. Okay, so anyway, so let me get into what I logged in to talk about. So over the weekend, I went to church, which I do. I consider myself to be a Christian. I go to a Bible study on Fridays usually. I am not a big fan of the church. I'm not a big fan of evangelicals. I'm not a big fan of fundamentalism, right-wing politics, any of that stuff. And I don't believe that the teachings of Christ, whether you believe them to be fiction or not, those teachings themselves do not support very much at all that has to do with conservatism. You can pick a thing here or there and attribute it to conservative mentality. But the body of evidence of the writings of Christ that we have are pretty overwhelmingly liberal, especially given his time, right? So I hold pretty strongly to that mindset. Now I go to church over the weekend, and the church that I go to is irrelevant, but there were some things that I'll pull my notes out here. There were some things that they kind of talked about, which made me wrong phone, which made me kind of raise an eyebrow, right? So, there were a few things that they had said, and there was a group playing there. The group was called Leland. They were very good, as far as like great musicians. Um, the church that I was at was very Pentecostal. So, as you would expect from a Pentecostal church, a lot of singing and overt cheering, praising, raising of hands, that sort of stuff. I don't really get into all of that so much, but if that's what you like to do, then that's fine. That's cool. If you believe in that, that's the way you want to worship, then go right ahead and worship that way. But not really for me, but cool, right? So, but while I was there were a few things, and I go to church a lot. Like one of the reasons why I don't like singing so much in church is because I enjoy listening. I studied religion in college, um, and I have a degree in religious studies, in addition to my degree that's helpful to me in life, which is in marketing and organizational psychology. But the religion has always been something that has fascinated me, and the lines between different religions, the similarities when you juxtapose Christianity with Islam and Hinduism and Taoism and Shinto. There's a lot of similarities within those. A lot of the philosophies are very, very similar. Sometimes they're different. Sometimes some are more different than others, of course, right? There's a diversity within the world, and the diversity is good. Um, but so I enjoy listening to that, and I enjoy sitting and sometimes in listening to the preacher talk and kind of saying, okay, this is where I agree with you. This is where I might not agree with you. This is something that maybe I can think about, etc. And I can tell you, never in my life have I had more to think about than I did during this particular service. And there were a couple of things that the lead singer of Leland said that made me think. And there were a couple of things that the pastor said that made me think, but not probably in the way that you're thinking that it made me think, right? Like, generally speaking, when you talk to someone and they say, man, I went to church over the weekend and it really made me think, their next sentence is usually going to be something like, you know, the pastor really spoke to me, or this really meant something to me. And, it's this possible epiphany or life changing experience coming around the corner, and usually pushes you closer to the church. Um, that's not what happened. And the first thing was the singer from Leland said something, the head singer, lead singer. And again, probably super decent dude. Um, he was talking about the blood of Christ, and was talking about how the blood of Christ is so precious because of its rarity. Now, I'm not able to find any biblical, um, any scriptural references to sort of back that up, unless there might be something that I'm not aware of. Nothing jumps off of the top of my head as far as like the Bible speaking about the blood of Christ being rare. Of course, it talks about the blood of Christ having power, or it implies that at least in a few places. And but he used the term rarity. He said it's the most rare thing in the universe was the blood of Christ. But I started thinking about that when he said it, and I said, is it? Because since God, the idea of God is that since God is omnipotent, shouldn't God then be able to have an unlimited amount of blood, at least in theory, that he could create? So then why would the blood of Christ be the rarest thing in existence? Why would it have, so that's not to say if you're a Christian, you're listening to this at and you're like, well, the blood of Christ has power. I'm not arguing the power part. Okay. This is about the statement that this gentleman made, saying that its power comes from its rarity. All right. So now this could be just one guy just jabbing along, right? And really not having any way to back up his claim, I guess. No scripture to fall that back on. He just thinks it sounds good. Maybe that's the case. And if that's the case, maybe it's not a big deal. But the cheers from that followed that statement were really noticeable. Like they were like, "Yes, it's so rare. Yes, yes, preach on," and the excitement of that statement was something unlike I had seen in church in my life. Now, I'm generally don't go to Pentecostal churches. Uh, Only been to this particular one handful of times, and this was definitely the loudest that it was. But again, there was a visiting group, so maybe it was everybody was charged up, right? So, um, yeah, that's true. It's not. Yeah, Wednesday they have their Wednesday service, which is all singing. That's true, Tim. But the again, he talked about the rarity and like so philosophically speaking, if something if God is omnipotent, he could therefore then create as much sanctifying blood as he wants to. And you might and I've been wrestling with that thought because I'm like, well, if is he unable to create the situation where other blood would be equally sanctifying? Like if Christ were reincarnated again today and did the whole same thing over again? Live on Twitch. Um, like he set the rules. So is he incapable of breaking his own rules? Because he makes the rules. So if he's incapable of breaking the rules, does that make him not all powerful? And so then I sit there and I'm a critical thinker and I'm trying to think critically. And I'm like, well, what would they say about me? They being the other people in church. They would probably say, um, that it has to be rare, or that I'm a doubter, or that God is trying to speak to me and I'm not listening because the devil is stopping it, or my own pride is stopping it, or something of that nature, right? I'm trying to think like, okay, what would Christian me, especially more devout Christian me from like the 90s, the 80s and 90s. I was young, but it was, you get pretty deep into your faith at high school, that's in high school group, right? Especially when we went to Timberley, which is in Wisconsin. You go to all the high schools come and you got like 12, 13, 14 different church high school groups there. And like it gets pretty robust, your faith when you're there. You sort of walk out on this, like what you might call a spiritual high. Okay. And it lasts like a few days. Some people maybe for their whole life, but for my case, I can only speak for myself. But like I'm trying to think critically and say, okay, well, what would they say about me, right? So, and it's hard for me to really uh have an accurate answer to that, because obviously there'd be a diverse amount of people who would say something to me and there'd be a diverse spectrum of things that they would say to me. And I don't want to pretend to characterize that I would know all of them, but at the same time, the idea is that that they would say, well, we'll just pray about it and God will speak to you, and you they back it up with Bible verses and all this type of stuff that usually aren't relevant, because I've been down that path a million times. And I just keep coming back to this philosophical question that, hey, God gave me a brain. He wants me to use that brain. This is not an anti-religion statement. This is not an anti-Jesus statement. This is not an anti-salvation statement at all. This is a critical thinking statement. And the critical thinking statement by itself is, if God, if the if the rarity of the blood of Christ has anything to do with its its ability to provide salvation or cleanse, which is what people always say, purify my soul, my spirit with the blood of Christ. That why can't you just have another, Christ can't come back again? Well, Jason, the second time it wouldn't be, he's already, he can only do it once. Why? Why? Give me a reason why. Because the first time wouldn't mean anything? What are you talking about? The first time happened 2,000 years ago at a time when there was nothing to verify that it actually happened. Today we have cell phone cameras everywhere. So why not do it again? I mean, God redid many, many, many things in the Bible. There are countless things that he did more than once because they didn't work on, not that you don't even have to say God was flawed. You could say that humans didn't accept it. How many times did he make a covenant with Abraham? Just Abraham. There wasn't just one covenant he made with Abraham. There were multiple, at least 3 that I can think of. Then he made another covenant with Jacob. Then he made another covenant with Moses. He's made multiple covenants. He gave different sets of rules to the Hebrews at different times. All of this stuff, Adam and Eve, he had an original plan there with Adam and Eve. Now I believe that's complete mythology, but if you believe it, he had a certain set of rules for Adam and Eve. Humans screwed up, so he came up with another rule to, or does he not make the rules? Maybe he doesn't make the rules, and if he doesn't make the rules, is he all powerful? So, I don't see any issue with asking these questions. I don't find these questions to be anti-religious. They're just questions about what we should talk about in these settings. There was another thing that one of the other churches, the pastor said when he got up there, the actual pastor of the church. And there's 2 things I want to talk about before I go off here. First one is that the pastor had mentioned woke churches. I'm really curious as to what the hell a woke church is. He was complaining about this thing called woke churches. And as those of you who are tuning in can see, I put a church background on because I'm talking about this experience, right? And I'm like, what the hell is a woke church? So what does but the cheers from this Pentecostal church were just astonishing. Yeah, the woke church, they weren't saying swear words, but it was kind of like, yeah, fuck the woke church without saying the F word. And, it's like, I'm really curious as to what a woke church is. And anyone who can educate me on what that might be, I'm super interested to hear what a woke church would be. Is that a church that says it's okay to get divorced? Because most churches have people in them who they accept with open arms who are divorced. They'll always tell you not to get divorced, but once you are, they don't banish you from the church. My iced coffee is delicious today, by the way. Just ask for forgiveness and you're good, right? So, is it a church that allows gay people in it? So you prefer that they don't allow gays in the church? Let's say you're right for the sake of argument and that God hates homosexuality. Now, it's true that the Bible does speak negatively about it, but that you could say is just the people who wrote the book, or you could say it was rewritten, or you could say that it's not any worse than any other sin. because sin is sin. I've heard 1,000 times. Keep telling me that. You know, you don't go to heaven. The Bible says it is by grace you have been saved, not by works, that lest no man can boast. And if that's true, what Paul wrote, that then what difference does it make what sin it is, and what difference does it make how holy you are? Because it is by a grace from the aforementioned blood that saves us. So my question is, again, what's a woke church? Is it a church that supports Black Lives Matter, advocates for social justice, doesn't go out doesn't overtly support Republican politics? Yahtzee. And I'm going to tell you right now that is it. I really believe that. I really believe that the Republican Party has done a fantastic job of controlling the narrative around what is said from the pulpit. And anytime that someone goes away from that to the slightest, then they're viewed as a woke church. And I kind of want to find one of these woke churches. I kind of want to go to one, be honest with you, so I can compare and contrast and see just how woke they are and what exactly is woke. So I would love for the pastor of this church, which I'll just say the name of the church. It's Canyon Hills Church in Bakersfield. So I asked the pastor, what can you point me to a woke church here in Bakersfield, California? Because I would really like to go to it and find out if it meets my definition of woke, or maybe just your definition of woke and what woke is. And last but not least, the group Leland had a song that they sang. I don't remember the name of the song, but again, this church is super loud. The service was mostly singing, and one of the songs had a line in it that was a recurring line, and it said something to the extent of, I believe it said, he is rewriting my history. Okay. I'm actually going to see if I can find let me see if I can find the Leland. Okay. There's Leland, the rock band. All right. So Leland, the rock band, rewriting my history. See if I can find the actual lyrics. I want to play their music because I'm sure they'll. All right, looks like it's a song, Better Word. All right, so let's find Leland Better Word lyrics. Here we go. Love Google. All right. Your blood is healing every wound, making all things new. Your blood speaks a better word. Do you believe it? It's singing out with life. It's singing down the lies. It echoes through the night, the precious blood of Christ. So again, this goes back to what we talked about before with the blood of Christ. He probably talked about this right before he sang this song. And okay, here we go. So speaking life over me, it's rewriting my history. That's the line. It covers me with destiny. And then they repeat this line over and over again. It's rewriting my history. It covers me with destiny. It's making all things right. The precious blood of Christ. It's rewriting my history. It covers me with destiny. It's making all things right. The precious blood of Christ. It's rewriting my history. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but it seems convenient that we hear this narrative and like when they were singing this song, and again, I'm not ragging on these people who are singing, right? That's not my intention. It's not like to make them seem like monsters because I doubt they are. I'm sure there's a few in there, the the I'm sure a few of them are very, very, very fine people. I'm joking, but kind of the they're like, yes, he's rewriting my history. He's covering me with destiny, and they're cheering, rewriting my history. That's very convenient. It's very interesting. Because that's all I hear today is how uh, we, as people who may be proponents of, social justice, etc., are, that the 1619 Project and CRT are rewriting history, um, or erasing history, with the removal of Confederate monuments and things of that nature. But on an individual level, it seems to be okay. And I thought about it and I was like, it makes sense to me now because the entire idea of salvation is sort of a rewriting of your history, or rewriting is probably the wrong word. The erasing of your past, specifically your sin. And so if you were a prostitute or a tax collector in the old days, right? Or today, if you were like what's the worst thing you could possibly be as far as evangelicals? A Democrat, or an abortion doctor, a woman who works at a bar, um, or a swimsuit model. I don't know, unless of course you are you try to be a model and then you fail like Lauren Boebert and then become a congresswoman. Then of course taking sexy pictures with a gun is fine, um, as long as you're a Republican. But but it's AOC dances on a roof, looking cute, and that's a problem. Anyway, um, yeah, but like it's at the same time, it's ironic as it is. It kind of flies in the face of it at the same time as it supports it, right? It's kind of weird. It's this weird juxtaposition of the two ideas. Um, because in one way, the idea is that God can can wipe away your past or rewrite your past so that now you are this new being. And you look at that and you say, okay, well, that's the same thing they want to do to America, is just say the past, forget it, and we move on. And then you have this that helps support the ideas of American exceptionalism and the house on the hill. Like even this church was bragging about during the service, not really bragging, but mentioned a couple times that their prayer tower is the highest point in town. So they want to be as close to God as possible, regardless of the fact that the Bible, there's a story in the Bible that basically says that building a tower to be closer to God is a bad thing. But anyway, we won't go there for now. But that's sort of what they've done to America. So then, like, if someone, so it's really strange, really weird. Um, but I don't see like uh, what the contrary idea though is that on the other hand they have already rewritten the history of America, or erase the history of America because of this exact idea. So it's super weird to me because I'm like wrestling my mind around it, and I'm like, it's kind of the same, but it's kind of different. But if you think about more than we think about the same, they are, because it's like they say you can do in your own individual life, you can rewrite your history, you can erase your past because of God. Look, just like we did with America. And God forbid that you ever try to say anything bad about America, because if you criticize America, you hate it. Unless, of course, you're criticizing Joe Biden or what he does, then in that case, that's not hating America. It's totally loving America. So as long as that's a conservative idea, you love America. But if it's a liberal criticism of America, you hate America, right? So it's like, fuck you with this absolutely ridiculous, hypocritical bullshit. But the point is that they've sort of done the exact same thing to the country as what they talk about doing to individuals through salvation. And then when we're like, hey, what about X? Like, it's almost like this. What if you had a person who was a rapist or a child trafficker? Because that's the big narrative these days. like and that's another thing I'll talk about another day, maybe, is this child trafficking thing, because like I don't want it to come off that I'm like, I think child trafficking is funny. We realize it's a thing. We realize that it's a fucking atrocity. It's widespread in the world, has been for thousands of years, right? Human and child trafficking is a thing. They want to kind of set it up as like it's like Tom Hanks is doing it. So it's a different conversation. Tom Hanks turned into Woody and is like the Pied Piper with him and Buzz Lightyear leading children away. That's okay. But anyway, so so if you had someone who's a child trafficker or a rapist or whatever crime, and they become a Christian, so they've rewritten their history and covered me with destiny. So now I have a destiny, which is, going to heaven, I suppose. Though that's probably broader than that too. But trying to wrap my head around this thought here. Not used to podcasting alone. Sorry. But so like God might say, okay, you're good. You are going to go to heaven now, even though you did these horrible things. Now you're going to heaven because you're washed by the blood of Christ. Fine. I don't control what God does, right? He's kind of above me in the hierarchy if he's there. So my thoughts of what he does are irrelevant. But does that mean that you therefore also don't have to answer to the authorities for the crime that you did before you were washed? And that, I think, is where the impasse is that, although America is an innate object that can't, man, it's such a deep topic, right? Because like, can American churches pray for the salvation of America and therefore have it be forgiven as a collective? Is that a possible thing? Because it seems to be that they might think that. But do they only absolve it for the people that agree with them or for the people that don't agree with them? So like it's the philosophy. Like I said, this was a deep fucking church service, man. And like I throw the F-bomb in the middle of there, really realizing the irony of that statement. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today. I don't want to go too long. I only have a certain amount of time because it's lunch break. So I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday when we have a new dig topic, which I don't know what it's going to be yet because I haven't done it yet. Probably do it tonight or tomorrow. And we'll have candidate Shahid Buttar on with us who is running against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco area. We've had him on before. He's a lot of fun, super smart guy. He is, I believe he is a constitutional attorney and a DJ. So that's cool. Our people are multi-talented, not like Marjorie Taylor Greene, where she's a crazy person and also a crazy person. Anyway, see you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.